discussing a case involving sexual assault and condom use. I want to let our viewers know that if you're uncomfortable with this topic where we discuss the details of sexual assault, you might want to change the channel. I want to get into what the court was asking in this case, which was heard before the Supreme Court recently. One of the questions that was asked by Justice Rowe was, he held up his wedding ring and he asked if he were to put his wedding ring in his pocket, whether that would vitiate consent, if that's comparable to sort of lying about condom use. Because without a requirement to prove fraud, which is the current standard, some incidents, like lying about marital status, would be criminalized when they shouldn't be. And of course, lying about your marital status is wrong, but it doesn't rise to the threshold of a criminal offense. A lot of people would be in jail if it did. So what can you say to answer Justice Rowe's question about expanding what type of conduct might vitiate consent in a sexual assault case? Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously have concerns as well about laws being drafted or interpreted in an overly broad manner. So we don't want to criminalize behavior that shouldn't be criminalized in the first place. That being said, I think that removing somebody's wedding ring, lying about marital status, those types of things don't constitute part of the sexual act and therefore don't go to the issue of consent with respect to that act. So that would be my answer to that question.
Angela, I want to ask you the same thing, but I want to add to it about how this analysis might apply to, for example, pharmaceutical birth control. In the Hutchinson case, it involved tampering with a condom use. If a man consents to a woman who says that she's on birth control, but say she isn't on birth control, that does go in part to the sexual act. Would that vitiate consent?
It's such a great question. And what we often see judges doing, right, is they go to sort of one extreme in order to figure out how they're feeling about a certain situation, almost acting as devil's advocate. With respect to Justice Rowe, I don't think that the devil needs an advocate on this point. His colleague, Justice Jamal, was very quick to jump in and say, no, we're talking about physical acts here, which is just what Sarah articulated so well. Right, we're talking about the physical acts, not lying about marital status or whatever other people do. We're not going to say that every time you have sex and perhaps regret it, that should be criminalized. So that vitiation of consent, that fraud part, it is limited to physical acts. And I don't even need to go there. Justice Jamal handled it extremely well.
But what about the analogy to pharmaceutical birth control?
Yeah,
I think.
Oh, sorry, Angela.
Go ahead.
Jump in very quickly on this one. I think that it's important to take this out of a heteronormative context as well. So when we're talking about condoms, a lot of the times our courts talk about the prevention of pregnancy, prevention of disease. I think it's important to separate those things. Condoms are often used in order to help with safe sex, not in pregnancy prevention, absolutely, but also in the transmission of disease. So I think if we look at it from that perspective and change the narrative from pregnancy prevention to safe sex, I think it would make a bit more sense.
Angela, anything you want to add there?
I think that we do. I absolutely agree with Sarah. I do think it is important on top of that to recognize that cis women and cis men do face different risks when it comes to sex, pregnancy being one of them. And the law recognizes pregnancy as being a risk of bodily harm. Pregnancy still can wind you up in the hospital. It can wind you up in a morgue if things go wrong. And I think that even in a country like Canada, where access to abortion is so limited for so many communities, especially First Nations and rural communities, that we do need to recognize the different effects to men and women and the fact that sexual assault still disproportionately happens in a heterosexual context where women are affected much, much more than men.